Good evening. I'd like to call the January 14th meeting of the Historic Preservation Board to order. Before we even get started, if everybody please turn your phones on silent so we don't get interrupted by that. I just did it myself too, double check. Okay. First, what we usually do is just do let everyone introduce themselves and what their role is, if they're a board member or staff or whatever. So we'll start with Kim down there.
Kimberly Others, Secretary to the Board.
Pat Cornell, board member.
Carol Johnson, board member.
Cindy Tarpon, Chairman of the Board.
Carrie Page, board member.
Erica Agello, board attorney.
Pat McNeese, principal planner.
Thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda is public comments. This is for anything that's not on the agenda. If you want to talk about something other than one of the cases that's on the agenda, please feel free to come on up to the podium, and we're here to listen. Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes for our last meeting, December 3rd, 2018. These were not in my packet, but I did review them while we were waiting. Did anybody else get a copy? That's what I was afraid of. Oh, do we have any extra copies by any chance?
My fault. I apologize. I can get extra copies.
We could put it the next
Okay.
time.
Do you want to defer this item to the next item while I get you copies?
Yeah, why don't we do that? We'll do
Okay.
The organizational meeting and then come back to the minutes if that's all right with everybody. According to our rule bylaws, we elect a chair and a vice chair every year. So actually I'm going to ask our board attorney to run this since I'm currently the chairman. It'd be kind of odd for me to run that part of the meeting. So if you would do so, I'd appreciate it.
Of course. For the position of board chair, are there any nominations for to fill that position? Somebody has to nominate someone.
Well, I'd nominate Cindy if she's willing to serve another year.
I'm willing to serve if the board so chooses. Sure.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. Congratulations, Madam
Thank you.
Chairwoman.
All right. So
For the
now-
position of vice chair, are there any nominations for vice chair?
She was Carol Johnson.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations.
Thank you. So for the next year, I'll serve as a chair. Thank you for your support, and Carol will be the vice chair. Ms. Johnson, thank you. Now we're going to move to the quasi-judicial announcement and the swearing in of speakers. And before we get to that, I just want to say we do have formal processes to be followed, which our attorney will spell out. You do need to come to the podium and speak and give your name and address for the record, and state if you're the applicant or you're opposed to it or you're in favor of it, whatever your position is. These are all just so that we have a good record of what happened today. We don't have any limits on how long you want to speak, although we ask you to be direct and concise. But we want to hear whatever you have to say about the topic, whether you're the applicant or you're talking about a specific application. And well, I'll let you go ahead and give the rules then.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Heritage Preservation Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest this evening?
No.
No.
Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak this evening, applicants or any members of the public, if you could please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn.
Even if you're not sure if you're going to speak, please go ahead and stand. Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
Thank you. Ms. Aguelo, can you speak to the issue of the last case on the agenda? We have a notice issue that we want to take up and decide whether or not the application is been properly noticed or not. If it is, then we'll hear it on in the regular order. If it's not, we want to let people know, the applicant know that. This is with regard to case number 18-166, 310 East Tarpon Avenue. It is the last item on the agenda.
Yes, I did have some concerns about this application, as the notice that was sent for the application itself from the applicant only requests one change, which is the replacement of 3 windows. The notice that went out actually noticed 3 different changes to the property. However, staff did receive a letter dated January 9th, 2019 from Hoffman Architects, neither from the applicant nor the applicant's representative as listed in the affidavit, requesting a much larger request for different items to be done to the property, which would require the approval from this board. Based on the law and the notice provisions, it is up to the applicant if they would like to move forward with the 3 items that were noticed properly for this meeting this evening, and then hear the remainder of the items at a later date, continue to the next meeting, which is in February, or if they would like to continue the entirety of the application to the next meeting in February. But that's up to the decision of the applicant and this board.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna let Ms. McNeese get back to her place. If you could just, Ms. McNeese, identify the specifically the 3 items that were included in the notice for the application on 310 East Tarpon Avenue.
Be glad to. The application itself states we would like to install 3 windows. The postcard states the applicant is requesting certificate of approval to install windows, a bar, and patio in the front yard. I can elaborate further on how that occurred if you'd like. The drawings originally submitted show more than just the windows, but those were not reviewed in detail at the time of the time the postcards were sent out. Like I say, I can elaborate further if you wish, but.
So I'm looking at the letter dated January 9th from Mr. Ray to you, and there's a bunch of items listed as a description of what the application is, and I'm just going to highlight what I think were not those 3 things, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So roofing, that says it's not to be replaced. Second floor siding will not be replaced. It will be painted. First floor siding, there will be some changes out where the windows are. The double hung windows to remain. The front bay windows, I believe those are the ones that are changing. Is that correct? That was noticed?
Those are new windows.
Right, but
Yes,
that
to
was
be
noticed.
installed, and that was noted.
Okay. The front porch guardrails was not noticed.
Not specifically.
The west deck guardrails also not noticed. Front porch columns and beams, I believe there's one column that's coming out, that was not noticed.
Correct.
Existing porch flooring replaced where needed. New steps up to the porch was not noticed.
Correct.
New single leaf and west double leaf storefront doors. So these are new doors on the front, not noticed.
Correct.
Light fixtures, I'm not sure that's something we review.
No.
New sidewalks and dining patio brick paver areas, that was noticed. That's the patio in the front yard that you were speaking of.
Correct.
And fencing and brick piers at the street border, new fencing, which was not noticed.
Correct. And to clarify again, the architectural drawings submitted do note some of those items, the stairs, the handrails. Again, staff did not, this application was submitted at 5 o'clock on the deadline date. The postcards were done the next week, and staff did not do a detailed review. It's partly an issue with the language that should be on the postcard, sufficient for the public, with a completeness review, which staff just did not have the opportunity to do with this. The submittal, the January 9th submittal, was done because staff, when we did review the application to write up the staff report, noted some information that we needed in order to evaluate the application. We notified the architect and the applicant, and they responded very quickly with that information, which is the letter you just read from. And we based the staff report on that. But again, there were some noted differences, and also some of the items were on the original architectural drawings that are not included on the postcard. So it was a combination of things that just happened trying to get this thing in and done.
Would the applicant like to come up and address these issues and let us know how you want to proceed? And keep in mind, you need to keep your conversation, your presentation to whether or not you want to proceed with just the noticed items or whether you want to wait a month. We don't want to hear the whole case in full now. We just want to talk about whether it's noticed properly or not. We didn't want you to sit here all night if we were going to later at, an hour from now, continue the case.
No.
And staff will add that this item could be continued to the February 4th meeting with time to do the postcards over again. That's about 3 weeks from now.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Manise, you said there is time to do the appropriate
Yes, there
notice.
is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm Ed Hoffman, Hoffman Architects. I'm here with Doug
Clark. I do
Doug
give
Clark.
Ed permission to speak on my behalf as well.
Does that make sense?
Well, I'm sorry, I know Mr. Hoffman, I caught your name, but I didn't catch the other gentleman's name.
Doug Clark, I am the purchaser of 310 East KCQ. I'm just giving permission for Mr. Hoffman to speak on my behalf.
Okay, great, thank you.
That wasn't on the original application.
Okay,
Ed Hoffman, Hoffman Architects, 29 West Orange Street, Tarpon Springs. This is not a residential project. This is a commercial project. The things that evolve in that, and the timing and the money that's involved is very, very critical. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. So, it was submitted. The idea that some of the things were not posted perfectly accurately, and there are a few extras, do not seem to be, would be a concern. I can't imagine that someone would read that postcard, having interest in that building, and decide they don't want to be here because it didn't talk about some little specific item. When you talk about the windows and I'm sorry, did it mention the handrail, Pat?
What was noticed on the postcard?
Right.
It mentions install windows, a bar, and a patio in the front yard.
Right. I mean, those are some pretty big pieces of the puzzle. And so the idea that she missed the idea that we had submitted a change in the handrails, and a few things like that, or the hinges on the doors, or whatever that is, it seems to me to really be minor in terms of the message that goes out to say, hey, there's going to be some significant modifications to this building. So maybe in the legalese department, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say that, but I can't imagine that there's anybody that received this notice that said, oh, well, they're just doing a new bar and they're just doing new windows and they're only, so I'm not going to go, because I don't think there's anything that we're going to present tonight that would change, be a significant change to what somebody would be anticipating from the public. So we would like to go ahead and proceed tonight if possible, but we would like to do, because, again, time and money, we don't want to have to sit. We think we are fully prepared tonight. And we would rather not have to have Mr. Clark wait on this project another 3 weeks before we can even begin drawings, because we don't want to do drawings at risk that for some reason or another you wouldn't give us approval on some other details further down the road, because we need to be able to get to the building department as quickly as possible. So,
I have to rely on the board attorney and what I know about notice. Whether or not someone would or would not have come is really not relevant. The point is, there was only 3 main items noticed. If you want to proceed tonight, we can only hear and talk about those 3 items. None of the rest of the items that you want to do with the project can be approved tonight. You can resubmit, or I don't know if we're going to continue that part, Pat, or I don't know technically how we're going to do that, but all the other items that weren't noticed have to come back to the board, like the fence, for example, would have to come back to the board after.
I'm sorry, the what?
The fence.
Oh, the fence.
The fence is one thing that's listed, the change to the porch columns, the new steps, the new doors. Those are the items, just running kind of quickly through them, that were not noticed. So we cannot discuss those tonight. You can say anything you like. I can't keep you. You can make whatever presentation you want, but we're not going to be able to vote on those items if they weren't properly noticed. They're not properly before the board, and if it's not properly noticed, it's really not a legal case. So that's the challenge. But we're willing to. I think the rest of the board is willing to hear those 3 things that were noticed. If you want to do that, it's entirely up to you guys.
Okay. I think we probably will. Do we need to tell you right now, since we're last on the agenda?
No, I really was doing this at the beginning for your benefit. And
Right.
is there anyone here who's here for that case? Okay, I don't see anyone rise. All right, so I was just really doing it for your
Okay,
benefit.
and I
for
appreciate that.
For
Appreciate
if there's
that very
someone in the
much.
audience here, so they didn't have to wait around to the end and find out it was going to get continued. So
Right.
if you want to
No, that's
go
appropriate and
discuss it,
appreciate
that's
it.
fine, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the agenda. When we get to you, you can let us know what you want to do.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to start at the beginning of the agenda. Application 18-93, demolition of an outbuilding, a 1-car framed garage, 1-car garage. It's a contributing structure. This was continued from the December meeting. The address is 58 Reed Street, and the applicant is Conger Diaz. We had this case, we heard it, I think we actually heard it in October, and it was continued to December, and then the applicant couldn't be here in December, if I remember correctly, so now here we are.
And prior to proceeding, Pat, I just need to swear you in since you were grabbing the minute. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
All right, Ms. McNeese?
Yes, as mentioned, this is a proposed demolition of a detached garage that is a contributing structure at 58 Reed Street. The applicant was heard, scheduled on the October 1st meeting. The board asked for additional information and continued the application to the December 3rd meeting. The applicant asked for a continuance from that meeting to tonight, January 14th. The items requested of the applicant, which were an estimate of the demolition compared to an estimate of basically rehabilitating the building, have not been supplied to staff. At this point, staff continues to recommend approval of the demolition based on the applicant's letter from the contractor that states in order to bring the building to code, it would need to be demolished and completely rebuilt. But staff would encourage the board at this point to act on the application. I have not heard from the applicant, so I don't know if she's here, but I can go through the staff report if you'd like again.
Want to go through the staff report, or do you remember?
I think we ought to vote on it.
Say again?
Let's vote on it. I think it's pretty quick.
Okay. The applicant like to come forward? Applicants like to make your presentation? Oh.
Hi, I'm Anastasia.
Can you give your full name and your address, please?
Anastasia Conger, 7121 Arboretum Way, Newport Richey.
Okay.
Stavat Larscheid,
4042 Marchment Boulevard, Land O'Lakes.
Ella Hurtis, 5116 Beacon Hill Drive, Newport Richey.
Thank you. Did y'all want to make a presentation or make some comments?
No, I've contacted 3 different construction companies, and once they came out and looked at it, they said that there's no way that that would be cost effective to rebuild the garage. I did contact the original contractor that we had submitted the letter, and she felt that the letter was sufficient enough. I told her what I needed. I needed an estimate for demolition and also to redo the garage, and she told me she would do it, and then I made numerous phone calls after that with no response. I think she just feels that the letter that she gave me was sufficient enough.
So the bottom line is you couldn't get any contractor to give you an estimate?
Correct. I even called handymen, and when they came out and saw the extent of work that needed, they just said it was above their scope.
I just have a question. I know the board might too. Can you just tell us why the building got to this condition? It didn't happen by itself. I mean, what happened?
We haven't really, to me, the garage wasn't even an issue. I mean, we never really paid that much attention to it. It doesn't look any different than it has for many years. As far as windows and doors, I think we discussed this before. It never really had it. On one side of the garage, on the inside, it looks like either my father or my grandfather or somebody kind of patchworked the wall on the inside. The floor, the concrete flooring isn't even a full slab. It's only a partial slab. So, and they just used it for storage mainly. It was never a one-car garage. It was just a storage. It didn't have a door, nothing. So I don't even know if they built it or whoever built the house built it. I'm not sure.
Well, according to the data that the staff provided us, the house was built in 1920 and the garage was built in 1940.
Oh, see, that's way before me, so, and that's something that we didn't discuss as I was growing up, so.
Okay. Comments, questions?
It looks to me like it's beyond repair, just from a visual look at it, that I can't imagine that there's any redeeming quality in that building.
I understand. I guess I'm kind of gleaning from the application and from y'all being here that this was not, maybe you did live there growing up, but this was your parents' house, your father's house.
Right, correct.
And that you maybe y'all inherited together and now you're
Right.
dealing with that,
Right.
that issue. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that perhaps the previous owner didn't really pay attention and didn't maintain the garage, but it's what we call demolition by neglect. So if you just ignore a problem, whether it's in your house or your garage or any other outbuilding, and it just becomes dilapidated and deteriorated because you're not doing normal maintenance, that's what demolition by neglect means. So we wouldn't normally let that happen to our own house. None of us would do that. You get a leak in your roof, you fix it right away because you know how serious it is. You get a broken window, same kind of thing,
Right.
air conditioner. And I think there's a tendency for accessory structures like garages to be considered less important, and actually they are. I wouldn't say they're just as important as the principal building, but they add a certain character to the whole historic district. And so when I see one that is historic and that has been just neglected over the years, it just terribly bothered. And I appreciate that it's not necessarily your fault because you didn't own the property and now you do own it and you're having to deal with it, but that's my concern. And so I'm still deciding how to vote, but I just want to send a message to you guys and to the staff and to anybody out there that demolition by neglect is just not going to be tolerated. I think y'all have perhaps some other mitigating circumstances, and I appreciate it. I mean, my husband and I dealt with, his mother's house, not for as long as y'all have, but someone's got to have some responsibility.
I understand.
So that's
I understand what you're saying.
That's my problem, my concern. But I'm just one person on the board.
I have a question. If the board votes to approve this, if the board votes to not approve the demolition, so we vote against this application, what responsibility falls on the applicant at that point then? she's already sought a couple estimates with no response. I mean, it seems as if the board would be boxed into the only decision which is left is to vote for demolition because they've done their due diligence in seeking other estimates and other opinions. What's left?
And I'm gonna say that's something that's gonna be up to the applicant if that's the case that happens. You know, that's not, and I don't mean to sound crass, but that's not really something that's the purview of this board. So I understand that's a concern that you want to bring as a factor, but it's not.
No,
gonna
I
be a
don't want to
factor
bring
of
it
this
as a factor. I'm
application.
just curious what happens if the building is torn down anyway, despite the vote of this board. Then is it a code violation? Is that what happens, or?
And I can't answer that. I can tell you, I believe there's an open code
There
enforcement
is an
case on
active
this
code
building as
case.
it is.
Yeah, and the applicant would need your approval to demolish the building.
Yes, I understand
So
that.
Can I say something? The code enforcement, we were just there on Thursday night, and they're waiting the approval of this board to go ahead and decide one way or the other what we're going to do. If the board votes that we have to reconstruct this garage, it's going to have to be reconstructed from the ground up. I mean, I don't think anything is salvageable. So originally, when I got that estimate on the paper that I turned in at the first meeting, the lady at the construction company, the owner, told me that, and I mentioned it to the board the time we were here, that she estimated around $30,000 to redo this garage. Unfortunately, she did not give me the written estimate that I requested, and I requested several times since I couldn't get anybody else to give me an estimate. So if we're disapproved on demolishing, I don't know what we're going to do. We can't afford to put $30,000 in a garage.
I really
That's
feel
just-
as if I want to reiterate what our chairman has said, that there are outbuildings associated with historic buildings and historic property, and there's purposes for those buildings. Some may be a smokehouse at one time, some may have been a spring house at one time, some may have been a purposed garage at some time. And if I just don't, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like this may set precedent, and I don't feel that that's what this board is here. We're here to defend the historic properties in our.
And just, I want to clarify, this board will not set precedent on an individual
I understand.
application. Because, you know, as a quasi judicial hearing, you're taking the evidence
I
as it
understand.
comes, so
I'm used to.
you don't need to be concerned with.
Okay.
I guess the other thing that I'm concerned about is that when we have, and we rarely have demolition applications, but when we have had demolition applications for a principal structure, it does require a detailed economic evaluation or financial evaluation.
Yeah.
What's the cost to demolish it? What's the cost to restore it? You know, and so then there's a comparison and conversation about, okay, if it's going to cost this much to restore the building, and here's all the challenges that go with it. You know, then the board, I can think of one case on Spring Boulevard where the board did approve it. That's the one that comes to mind. There's probably others, but in this we don't have the information to evaluate, and that's why I'm troubled.
And it wouldn't be restored. It would have to get knocked down.
See,
and
I don't
rebuilt.
excuse
Well,
me.
would it help if we took pictures? I mean,
we've got
inside and out.
we've got
I mean,
pictures.
that just really, that picture doesn't give it justice as far as the amount of work that it needs. I mean, we could take pictures and bring in the inside, what it looks like, and the outside. The one side of the garage that totally needs to be redone, and like I said, the inside is looks like patchwork that probably my grandfather did. I don't know, my father or somebody. And no windows. I mean, if I could take pictures, if that might help you make your decision, we're willing to do that. But
It's not really a matter, for me, it's not a matter of pictures, it's a matter of having the professional documentation from, when this board has asked for cost analysis, this board has asked for documentation from professionals stating their professional opinion, whether it should be
do you have or can you recommend a construction company that might be able to help us out?
Yeah, it's really
Because I've-
not our role to do
Yes,
that.
but we did. We have called several, and no one has called us back or come out to meet us or anything like that. We do have the letter, one letter that says that demolition is what it needs because of the structure of the garage. That's the only letter that we have that we can offer. But again, no one has called, no other contractors have called us back, has met us out there. I mean, we've called at least 5 of them.
I reached out to 6 different ones on Thumbtack. I don't know if you know what Thumbtack is. It's like an Angie's List. Out of 6, 2 responded back saying they were too busy at the time to even come out and give me an estimate. The other 4 didn't even respond to me.
So we have tried to get a letter of estimates, and no one is complying with us either.
Well, I think you can see the difficulty that we're in because you're asking us to make a decision without full information. I personally have been involved in renovation of historic buildings where I've, done the hard work. And I see a lot of the siding of this building that can be saved. I recognize that it needs
Just at
some-
one side, just
like
on
there's a
the
couple of
west,
just like
I
2
think
or
it's
3
the east
sides of
side
this.
of the garage. The west side, which the pictures aren't there of the west side, it totally, the whole side needs to be redone. The back, a lot of the wood, probably from, I would say the middle down, needs to be replaced.
Lise, when was the code enforcement case started? Can you tell me when the code enforcement case started on this application?
When
Do
it
you have any-
started,
I mean, when were they cited by the code enforcement?
I don't know the date.
You
It's
all-
a 2018 code case number.
I think it was
so-
either June or July. That's when it was started.
Do you have any other comments you'd like to make?
No.
To the board?
Members of the public.
I'm sorry. Yes, is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this case? Okay, seeing no one rise. Last call, any other comments you'd like to make? Applicant?
No.
Thank you. Board? Do.
I will move that the board deny this application as submitted.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor for denial by Ms. Page. Is there a second? I'll second. Seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Further discussion by the board? We need to have a little bit of discussion because if we do deny it, we need to give reasons for denial. I mean, again, my concern is, as I've stated, it's a demolition by neglect where we're basically rewarding someone for bad behavior. Unfortunately, it's not the folks that are here. It's, someone who isn't here any longer,
Right.
and that makes it, I think, difficult for all of us. And if it weren't a accessory structure that was historic and was contributing, I wouldn't be concerned about it at all. But without the data to make a decision, we don't really know. Even those of us and all of us have experience in preservation, we're not capable of sitting here right now and calculating if the cost to restore it is extraordinary or not. And so that's the dilemma that we're in, is having that discussion.
Yeah, that's my concern as well, that there just isn't sufficient data. I mean, I understand what you've been told and see that letter, but to me, it's not substantive.
At first blush, too, I'm not a professional, I don't know, but some of this does appear to be salvageable, and then if you were to compare the cost of what is salvageable to what could be restored, that's out of my scope. So,
Definitely, that's out of all of our scope.
Right,
don't-
so we
rely on
need to
experts
have-
to show us that.
I really feel like I need expert input on that, where I could make a decision.
Okay. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Cornell,
No.
Ms. Page,
Let's, before we, we could hold on before we continue the motion. I should have said this. The motion is to deny the application. So if you vote yes, you're voting to deny the application. If you vote no, you're voting against the motion. So
I
just to
vote
clar-
no.
Thank
Ms. Page,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
you. Yes.
Ms. Tarpani,
Yes. The motion to deny the application passes 3-1, so the motion is, the application is denied. And you can discuss with the staff, there is an appeal process to the Board of Commissioners. You can discuss that with the staff and take whatever action is needed. We don't really get involved in code enforcement except to know that case came out in code enforcement, but it's up to you how you want to proceed, either with an appeal or to comply with the board's action. Okay, we're gonna move on to our next case. Let's see, application 18-158. This is for 101 North Gross Street, driveway relocation, brick surfacing of the driveway and walkways, and install a picket fence. Ms. McNeese?
Yes, this is an application for a removal of an existing concrete driveway to redo the existing walkway on that side of the house in brick and to add a brick apron on that side of the house. That's on the Orange Street side. And then on the Gross Avenue side, they're proposing installation of a brick driveway and parking pad and picket fence. I think I got everything. Oh, and also a new brick walkway in that area as well. Going through your analysis, mainly going down to item 3 on page 2, the proposed project basically complies with the land development code, including the width of the proposed driveway. The applicant has proposed really a minimal width for that driveway, that new driveway. And the addition of that parking and driveway would bring the residents into compliance with the current code for parking for single-family residents. Also, the fence is proposed to be approximately the height or comparable to the neighbor, which also would meet the code. That would be the 4 feet or less in height. Going to item 7, basically, the existing driveway on Orange Street went into what was a garage. That was part of this colonial revival structure, had a garage. That is no longer a garage, according to the applicant, and I did find a remodel permit in our records from 1997. That was probably remodeled around that time. So that is now living space, although they did retain the batten door in that area. So that driveway is proposed to be removed and replaced basically with part of the yard with grass. And then they propose to carry the brick that's on the walkway onto that Orange Street porch into the rest of the project, basically. And the parking pad is proposed to be put, the driveway and parking pad would lead behind the existing oak tree, and then there would be a picket fence on that side. Staff recommends approval of the application, and this was properly noticed with postcards, and there were no responses received. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions, Ms. McNeese. The picture shows the picket fence, at least on the, see, that's the gross side.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the new fence going, along the orange?
That fence doesn't exist there now. That's been applied to the picture. There's no fence there at the moment.
Oh,
Yeah, the picture shows that's a photoshopped picture.
photoshopped. Okay, I was confused.
Now they do have, I believe they have a picture of the adjacent residents with their fence, and they propose to do something either similar or matching exactly. I'm not sure if the applicant is here and can address that, but they would do something similar to that. Okay.
Hold on just 1 second. We'll get to you. Give us just a minute. Let's answer our questions. And then I had one other question, Ms. McNeese, on this survey that shows where the improvements are going. On the Orange Street side, there's a little section that they're saying in brick, but it looks like it's in the right of way.
Yeah, that's to carry the brick out to the street, out to the pavement, on the other side of the sidewalk.
Does the city allow them to do the work in the right of way?
Just like driveway aprons, they would now. This has not gone through building permit process.
Okay.
If there is some reason that the city wouldn't allow that, then it wouldn't be permitted.
Okay.
I did not go into that detail to check, but
Okay.
I think it would be treated like a driveway apron. So,
Other questions for the board? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward? Come on up to the podium, please.
Thank you. Hi. Fred Wood, 101 North Gross. My wife, Debbie.
Hi.
We moved into 101 North Gross a few months ago. So we're new to the neighborhood. We're new to the town. And we moved here because we loved that structure, and we have been enjoying the structure and enjoying the neighborhood. And our objective is, because we don't have any on-street parking now, is to give ourselves the opportunity to get some off-street parking. And what we'd like to do it in such a way that we're actually retaining the historic character of the house, the charm of the house, and hopefully being an asset to the neighborhood. As was mentioned, I think Pat mentioned, we're trying to keep the driveway profile as its egress to the street at a minimum width of about 10 feet. Trying to tuck part of it behind the existing oak trees so that it will be relatively less conspicuous, and we're also intending to put in reclaimed brick so that it will look as if it's been there for a while, if you will. The picket fence that we're hoping to put in is identical, or will be identical, to our two adjacent neighbors. They have attractive looking picket fence, and we thought if we just, since we're a contiguous property, we'd just keep that going along. We'd like to wrap that around the entire property, or at least along Gross Avenue, and then continue along Orange Street up to the next neighbor.
We also have renderings of that too that we brought tonight. Would you like to see them?
Is that different from what we have in our
Yes,
packet?
that's on Gross. This is Orange.
Okay, sure. Happy to take a look. So this is like a photo illustration. You've added in the pavement and
Yes.
the fence. Okay.
When we bought the property 6 months ago or so, it was completely overgrown in the front. I don't know if any of you know the property or recall, but it was very overgrown. The house was barely visible from the street, so one of the first things we did was to clear out as much of the debris as possible and clean it up. And of course, that's just a start. I think it looks a lot better than it did. And that picture, those renderings were made from a picture shortly after the yard was cleaned out. So it's an improvement, and I think what we have there now is very attractive, and it's on its way to being hopefully what it can be.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, there is one comment. I apologize. The earlier discussion about 310 East Tarpon, I heard mention of railings on the porch or on the deck, and I didn't specifically mention that in our application because we were talking about a picket fence. And you'll see on that Orange the Orange Street rendering, you can see where I attempted to put in some railings there, and we're hoping to be able to do that as part of the fence project, but we didn't specifically ask for that. And if we have to come back with a separate application for that. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but certainly you'll be the ones to decide.
You're talking about the railing actually on the porch between the columns.
No, it's actually a handrail that would come down the three steps
stairs.
that are there.
Oh,
I see.
It's not easily visible.
I see.
The previous owners did have a railing. It was only on one side, but there was one there, because we found them in previous photographs. And we also believe there may have been some there because of some indentations on those poles that we could see.
Right. The steps actually have where it looks like some tube steel or something like that had been cut out. Obviously, if that's what was there, it wasn't very attractive, but we'd like to replace it not with that, but with something white wood that would be attractive.
So is those rails and the picket fence are wood, or what material are they?
The neighbor's fence, I believe, is a vinyl fence, and I think there are some advantages to using that, so we would probably, number one, because it's already in place with our neighbor's house, we'd keep the same materials, but also I think that's got longevity,
In Florida.
yeah, more longevity than wood.
And the handrails are wood or
I
vinyl?
think we haven't gotten an estimate from the fence company on the handrails or on the fence, but I think we'd use wood for those railings.
Just to try and match the
house
the
itself.
existing porch railings and things. Yeah.
I guess we need to go have the same conversation about those handrails, Ms. McNeese and Mr. Gullo, about whether or not that was noticed and whether it's properly before the board, that portion of it.
That was not noticed. The fence by itself would be a staff level approval. It was included here because the rest of it rose to board level. The handrails, I guess, would be considered part of the structure itself. So that's, without flipping through the guidelines real quick, that's probably under your purview. I mean, we can talk about whether that, that minor addition rises to a new application. I feel like what we have is sufficient, but
Well,
I would ask the board to weigh
if they
in.
have photos to prove that, or to show that there was a handrail there before, to replace it with a similar design would be a staff level approval anyway.
It would be. I'm not sure they have photos. I think they mentioned that they believe there was one there based on the structure. I don't know that the master site file photo shows it from that
I can show you a photo on
angle.
my
It does not.
excuse me. I could show you a photo on my phone of a previous real estate listing that has a railing in it. I don't know
Okay.
if that would be helpful.
Well, if they can produce an actual photo.
Yeah, if you can show photographic evidence that there was a rail there, then it doesn't need to come to the board. If you're replacing the same rail, same design as what was there before, that's a staff level approval. So.
Well, I don't believe this picture shows something very attractive. It's one railing, and it looks to me like it's a metal, like it's a pole railing. It's not,
Well, it may be
but
wood, but
we don't know.
it's
It
certainly
just-
not attractive.
We
but,
would like to do something nicer.
Well, the house probably would have had a wood handrail, not a
Yeah,
metal
I
handrail.
think so. And the house across the street has a beautiful railing, something like that one.
Ms. McNeese, Mr. Geller will defer to your recommendation on what to do about the handrail.
I think without more information as far as, if there is photographic evidence that can be produced at a later date and it ends up being a staff level decision, I think that's probably the best way to go. Otherwise, it would need to be noticed. And that's not otherwise, been applied for.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do have a picture.
An old real estate listing of the house. You can see there's a single railing coming down.
Right, so what's before us then today is the driveway, the fence, and I think we just need to be specific about the fence type, that it's gonna be as shown in these photographs. It's gonna be picket fence style, and it can be vinyl. That, everybody's okay with that? But since it's not really drawn on the plan that way, I want to be real specific about what we're approving so that when they go in for permits, that permitting folks know what we approved. My only other suggestion is, having been in development for a while, I suspect you might have some problems putting paver blocks around the tree because of the tree roots. So I personally don't have a problem if we let them either do brick or pervious pavement or, paver blocks if that's required. Because that close to the tree roots, you're gonna have some, the arborists might have some concerns about it. But that's my opinion. If the board thinks that's okay to let them have that flexibility, I hate for them to come back again if you have to do some part of it in paver block.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I won't.
Paver blocks they have holes in them, so it's not a solid paver that you
I
go buy from
understand.
Home Depot. It's got holes in them, so the water percolates through, and
Okay.
it doesn't have as much impact on, lets the water go through, and it wouldn't have as impact on the tree roots.
Right.
Okay.
And there may be some other, that's probably the best solution for the tree, something like that. I'm not an arborist, I've just seen a
Yeah.
lot of this issue coming up, and I'd hate for you to come back they say, well, this section needs to be paver blocks, not brick, to help that. That's my opinion, if the board would support that. For any further comments from the app?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the neighborhood, from the area, any citizens who would like to speak? Please come on up.
Hi, my name is Nancy Subic. I live at 334 East Orange Street, right across the street from the woods. You know my house as the Pinder House. I do approve. I would love for them to have their little fence up. I think it'll look wonderful. There are houses within the block and within eye distance of their home that does have the picket fencing. There's also chain link. There's various different fences. I think it would look real cottagey and really put their house together some. I do have something to say about those blocks you were talking about with the holes in them. They're just as deep as the brick pavers and as the antique road bricks. So I don't know if that's going to solve the issue, if there is one, of going around that tree. Because when you put the bricks up against each other, there is drainage between the bricks that water can go. But if you're talking about digging out a root to put a brick, the blocks are the same depth, so that's not really gonna make it or break it. I am a little concerned about the pavers. I'm not sure if I'm clear on, are they brick pavers? Are they antique bricks? Are they antique road bricks? What is the actual material that's going to be used for the driveway? Currently, I believe you have the antique bricks in the front where the walkway is. So I would like to see something like that or antique road brick to be used so that it's more conducive with their home, in the historic district and what they currently have.
Ms. McNeese, I understood from your staff report that it's bricks, not maybe, I don't know if they're doing old bricks or new bricks. I don't know that that's really our area, but it's actual bricks that they're proposing.
Yes.
Okay.
As opposed to the brick pavers that you get from Home Depot. A little thin 1-inch brick paver versus a brick.
Wouldn't support it.
That's all but whatever materials they decide to use, I think it's wonderful for them to have a driveway because it's a real safety issue on that road on East Orange Street. And they can't park on Gross Avenue. There's a fire extinguisher on the corner, and there are 2 driveways across the street from them. So when the people back out of their driveway, they're going to hit their car. So it's a real safety issue where they have to park currently on the street.
Thank you. Hold on one second.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sorry about the railing. I have lived in the Pinder House now for 16 years, and there was a railing there. Originally, when the Rowans purchased it, it had just a round bar that came down, just like a cattle bar, I don't know. And then it was replaced with a wooden one, but just one, which kind of seemed counterproductive to me. Seems like there should be one on both sides. Anything else? Am I done?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Stephanie Wood, and I live across the way on Tarpon Ave. And I just want to say everything that they've done to the house is just beautiful. They're there to make it better. And any changes, safety is one for the driveway, of course, but any changes that they've done and plan to do will just enhance the neighborhood. So we're all for it.
Okay. Would the applicant like to come up and address that issue about the brick?
Right, yeah. Regarding the bricks, we are intending to use reclaimed brick, if at all possible. That's part of the estimate that we receive. Of course, the supply of bricks, reclaimed bricks, is not, shall I say, it's not necessarily a guarantee of what they're going to look like, but we do intend to use reclaimed brick in a red clay material, so as close to street pavers or something like that as possible. And I think that's mentioned in our application.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ms. Page pointed out on the photograph, the historic photograph, that there does appear to be a railing on that would be the west side, but there's not a railing on the east side of that, on the Orange Street side. So I think that part's gonna have staff's gonna have to deal with that at a later date, when you guys figure out what the facts are. If they can have other pictures that show it, or however you guys work it out. But we're not gonna deal with the railings, not gonna deal with the handrail at this time.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, seeing no one rise, it's back to the board.
And I would just say whoever's going to make the motion, there was some discussion about some caveats on the application. If you could just be very specific in your motion, approve or denial if there's approval with conditions specific to the condition.
Anybody would like to make a motion? Conversation?
Question about the pavers with the, what are they called?
Paver block,
Yeah,
impervious.
So if when they get to installation, if it's recommended near those tree roots to use that material, would we need to specify that in?
I personally am willing to give them a little bit of flexibility, because I think it may come out, but I think we do need to specify, otherwise.
Later on, would they have to come back?
They'd have to come back.
Have those,
Yeah,
that material
however you're
approved?
going to structure the motion, if it's going to be an approval with conditions, I would be specific to the condition, for instance, like a reclaimed brick, or in the alternative, as similar looking paver as is appropriate. I mean, however you want to word it, but it needs to be pretty specific. Otherwise, if you just say, a paver, an impervious paver,
right.
I mean, they could put something like a slate paver down, and it just doesn't match with, your intention. So just make sure your intentions are within the motion.
I want to take a stab at so we have two issues. We have the brick, and then we have the picket fence.
I motion to approve the picket fence as stated.
And that has, and as to the brick pavers, the motion needs to address the entire application.
You want both of them in the same motion?
Sure. So the picket fence, you're saying as proposed, can we just clarify that it's on both streets?
Yes.
Okay.
And clarify the
And
material.
I was going to say, do you want to add conditions? There was some discussion about vinyl versus wood, or either or is fine.
Either or is fine.
the vinyl or wood material for the fence is acceptable. Okay, and then the second part about pavers.
And the driveway to be with brick pavers or something similar in appearance.
Okay, so for clarification, the motion is to approve the application for the picket fence with the conditions that the picket fence either be on both sides, on Gross and Orange, with the condition that the picket fence be either vinyl or wood, and to also approve the driveway with the reclaimed brick or similarly looking pavers, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the clarified motion that's before the board.
And I would point out that the walkways should either be specified or included. There's two walkways.
Driveway and the walkway.
There's-
It applies to the driveway and the walkway. Is that what we're saying?
And can we use the word brick?
Yeah,
I think that's what was in the motion.
Yes.
Yeah, I think she said bricks or similar in appearance.
Yes.
For both the driveway and the walkway. And that's a motion by Ms. Cornell. Is there a second to that motion?
Can you read the motion
Sure.
again, please?
That's what I have. Approve the picket fence as proposed on both streets of Gross and Orange with the condition that the fence may be vinyl or wood. Approve the pavers in the driveway and the walkway as brick or other similar material in appearance. Material similar in appearance. Yeah,
I second.
seconded by Ms. Page. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cornell,
Approve.
Ms. Page,
Approved.
Ms. Johnson, Ms. Terrapini.
Yes, so the motion passes 4-0. Didn't deal with the handrail, you need to deal with that with the staff. Okay, please don't forget to get a building permit. Okay, thank you. Our next application is application 1860 for 230 Hibiscus Street. It's to replace 9 windows and 1 door on the residence. Ms. McNeese?
Yes, this is 230 Hibiscus Street. It's a frame vernacular, single-story residential structure. The applicant is proposing to replace all of the windows on the outside. There are 8 visible from the outside. The 9th one is actually between the residence and the shed addition, so that can't be seen from the outside. And also to replace the front door. Basically, these are all replacement of wood windows on the structure with basically the same design, double hung sash, 1/1 vinyl windows. The style and trim color will match the existing windows, design, and size, obviously. The existing windows do have wood frames and sills. The applicant has not proposed that these would be disturbed. The existing door is a white wood door with wood frame and threshold, and it currently has a 12-pane window. And the applicant is proposing a solid steel door with an arched eyebrow window in the upper portion to replace that. The window and door replacements are consistent with the architectural style, and they don't detract from it as far as the appearance. They're also in character with the neighborhood and the architectural elements of other buildings in the surrounding area, including the use of the solid door. We have at least 2 residences across the street that have solid doors with upper windows. So that is consistent with that character in the neighborhood. The fenestration will not change as a result of all the window and door replacements being, as the applicant stated, size for size, so in their current size and configuration. Trim and sills would remain the same. The style of the building will remain as it is today. And the existing surrounds will be retained. So this upgrade will not detract from the building. This proposal is consistent with all of the guidelines and meets the Land Development Code and consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval with the condition that the building permits be obtained, and I also added just clarifying that the existing would be maintained, would not be disturbed, since it wasn't expressly stated. The applicant did not propose to disturb it, but I thought that would be something we should state. And property owners were, property within 200 feet was notified, and we didn't receive any responses to the notifications. Are there any questions?
I have one question. This is how the door got reproduced in my packet. Do you have a better example of the door, please?
I'll check the original application and see.
Okay. While she's checking that, any other questions? Anybody else have the problem with that? I didn't get a good copy. All right, we'll let her check that. And then, is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward?
Hi, Kelly Flannery, 230 Hibiscus Street. So I'm just requesting that the windows be replaced in the door because the state that they are currently in, it's not exactly safe. The windows don't all open. The one has a BB hole in it. They're damaged because they're very, very old. So they're screwed shut. Most of them don't open. They like wiggle with the wind. So just to replace them so that for safety and efficiency of energy. And the front door needs to be replaced because it is also the original. And you could single pane glass, so you could flick the glass and it would break very, very easily. So that's all I really have.
Did you consider having the windows repaired instead of all replaced?
The expense of that would be far greater than the expense of getting them replaced.
Do you have a bid to show that?
No.
It's just your general thought, or?
Yeah, because they, some of the windows are also damaged from termites that the house had before. So they're very flimsy.
I will pass around the original print of the door. It's not much better, but I'll pass that around for you to look at. I'm assuming the applicant does not have another. You did not bring another cut sheet for the door?
No, I did not.
There's also some reason why you picked steel as opposed to a wooden door?
I just figured for safety, probably better, and for humidity's sake in Florida.
So let's just put this on the record. So the photograph that is in your package, it's a raised panel door, and it's got a fan light at the top, and it's made of steel. Generally, when we look at replacing windows, we ask the applicant to show that the windows have so deteriorated, and generally the rule we look at is 50% or more of the windows are deteriorated such that they can't be repaired. I don't really feel like you've really done that evaluation. That's number one. Generally speaking, windows are such an important feature of a building that repairing them is the first approach in preservation, is so that you repair those windows. There are craftsmen who would do that work, or perhaps you. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to suggest that you don't have the skills to do it. You may. Maybe you're interested in doing that yourself. But you have to take the windows out and one by one do the renovation to that windows. But I really don't see anything in your application showing that more than half the windows are deteriorated. And I'm concerned about a steel door. You do have a porch overhang, so there's a place to keep water off that door. If it didn't have that, I would consider, something other than wood, because rain gets on wood and it's a problem. But you don't, in this particular case, have that. I appreciate wanting to have a solid door. I don't have a problem with the door style. I personally have a problem with steel. Not a historic material on this. Wow. Mm-hmm. Not a historic material on this type of building.
There are multiple buildings on the same street that are the same age that have that exact door.
You know, if I may comment, I'm Kelly's uncle, Joe Kozich. I live in Clearwater Beach. And after she took ownership of the home, I came up and took a look at the windows. A lot of them had tissue stuck in them so the air wouldn't come in and bugs wouldn't come in. I actually screwed several of them shut because I was afraid they were going to fall out. I was there when the first window replacement company came, and basically what he said was that the distance that the home is from the water requires that window replacements be done with hurricane windows. And the same thing for the door. I don't believe a wood door would satisfy that requirement that it be hurricane, able to withstand a hurricane. But she has ordered windows that will stand hurricanes and a door that will withstand a hurricane. The look of the building won't be any different. It's going to be exactly the same. It's just not going to be windows that were taken out and somebody tries to refabricate. These also have the ropes and the pulleys in the walls. None of those operate. And I think for the safety of the occupant, the safety of the neighborhood, should be much better off replacing them with windows that will withstand hurricane winds and a door that would as well. They're really in very bad condition.
Okay. Any other comment? No. Okay, we'll take any comments from the public. Any public comments on this case at 230 Hibiscus? Okay, seeing no one rise to the board. You guys, we've been pretty attentive to windows and looking at if there's a deterioration, we all understand that. If there's a deterioration to all the windows beyond the point where they can be fixed, but I mean that may be the case. I just don't see it in the data in this application. And I would also note, everyone seems to be also worried about hurricanes, but this building, according to the master site file, was built in 1905, and guess what? All the windows in the building is still there. We've had multiple hurricanes since 1905. So there's also our exceptions in the building code to for historic buildings. So it's not a requirement that you meet the hurricane windows for historic buildings. So I mean, I'm kind of struggling because I really don't see any data, again, a lack of data to show that they're deteriorated and therefore need to be replaced.
And to that, just for a legal clarification, the testimony is considered evidence, whether or not it's substantial, competent, and raises to the level that you think is up to the board, obviously. But I just wanted to make the clarification that a document is not any more evidence than the testimony is, just as a legal reminder.
Okay.
Do we have a window analysis on each window in this building?
I didn't see anything. I didn't see it in our packet. Was there anything else in the package that we didn't get, Ms. Benitez?
No.
I recognize that it's easier to just take the windows out and put in a new window. It is more time intensive for someone to repair those windows and repair the pulleys, but it can be done, and it's done pretty routinely. There's a lot of good historic preservation contractors in Tarpon because they've done all sorts of buildings all over town, including the house that I live in. So it's not a very unusual thing to have those windows repaired and done.
And the steel door, is that within the materials list for the code? I hear you.
The question, she said the question is the steel door in the code
on the materials, approved materials list, I think.
I wouldn't think it would be because it was a wood door. I mean, I appreciate changing out the style. I don't personally have a problem with the style, but a steel door would not have been on
it
that
does say
building.
the proposed window and door replacements are consistent with the original architectural style. But I don't know about the material. That's what I was concerned about, the steel.
Generally, the Secretary of Standards tell you to use the same material if at all possible.
Right.
Again, they do have a overhang on the front door to protect that door. Further questions?
I believe Patricia's
I'm sorry, Ms.
checking.
Denise.
Okay, doors are addressed on page 36 of your guidelines. Just to quickly go through, guideline number 1 is that the door shall match design and opening of the original door. I don't know that the door that's on there is original to the house, but it doesn't match the window part of the existing door. But there is it's a solid door with a upper window. Historic features surrounding the door, it mentions glass block and other non-historic materials should not be used. Okay, so that did not apply. Enlarging door openings, etc. It talks about this opening. That is not being done. The size is the same. New doors, this is not a new door entrance. Screen doors are discouraged. There's no screen door proposed. And then it talks about the portico. So it talks, I guess, more about the style, size, placement, those sorts of things. Just looking at the introduction, there's nothing there about materials as well. But it says the doors are usually constructed of wood with surrounding trim. That's what it talks about with most of these historic buildings, which
I
think
feel
know.
I feel strongly it needs to not be steel. It needs to be a wood door.
Speak up a little bit, Carrie.
I feel strongly that this needs to be a wood door, that it's more consistent with the historical nature of the property.
And clearly there's some building types that would have had steel doors, more commercial buildings.
Not in 1905.
Discussion? Comment? Okay, ready for a motion? I suppose if the applicant wanted to continue it and provide evidence of the deterioration, we would be open to that, or we can make a decision tonight on what we have before us. Would you like to address that, Ms. Flaherty? I'm sorry, but you do have to come up to the front so we can pick you up on our tape for the recording of the meeting.
So you're asking if we could get more evidence about the deterioration?
I'm suggesting if you would like to continue it, to provide more evidence of the deterioration of the windows and to reconsider I think you're hearing from a couple of us about this concern about the steel door.
Okay.
You could ask to be continued for a month to do that, or we can vote on the case that's before us tonight. I think there's some concern about the windows request, and I think there's clearly some concern about the steel door, the steel material.
Well, what kind of evidence would you like? You know, maybe I can say this
Crafts?
first. I know anything can be rebuilt. I mean, I'm sure you could find a craftsman that can rebuild anything, and then you'd say, well, at what price, what cost? So it's, I'm not a contractor, but you know, I know these windows are in extremely bad shape. It will be very difficult to redo them. So you're looking for just a statement from a contractor saying that?
No, we'll take photographs. We can bring your photograph. We've done that before. We've looked at photographs of each of the windows, you know, label them, you know, do a little drawing, build window 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and then a photograph of the windows up close so we can really see what's going on.
Okay.
And you could do more than one photograph if you think it helps explain what's going on, and then come back. Because if it's denied, then you're not gonna be able to do what you want, and you know, maybe we're not seeing. Maybe there's more evidence there that we're not seeing. So
yes.
I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here.
Okay. Well, if photographic evidence
it doesn't have to be a contractor.
Right. You mentioned termite evidence. So that would be, you know, show us that so that we can. And is it every window, or is it just certain windows that have that termite evidence? So
right.
Yeah, I think certain windows. Yeah, so, and I guess a question on the door. Your feeling is that a wood door would be much better than a steel or a fiberglass alternative.
Yes.
The windows up above in that arched pattern would be acceptable.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a
No.
problem with the design of the door, it's just
Right.
the material,
Okay.
using the
all right.
steel.
I think it's your call. Would you like to get photographed?
Then I guess I'd motion to continue.
I'm sorry.
Can I
you-
continue then?
Okay, so the applicants request to continue, so the next meeting is the February 4th. February 4th, 2019, so as soon as you can, you're gonna have to do it probably in the next week or so. Take the photographs, get them back to the staff so she can put it in our packet so we can take a look at it before the February 4th. And then if you, would take a look at the steel issue, I mean, it's up to you, you guys can decide what you wanna do. You take a look at that, and if you decide to do a different door, submit that, to Ms. McNeese as well. But you probably have about a week, say a week or so from tonight to get all that back to her. Is that about right, Ms. McNeese?
Mhm.
Yes.
I'll contact you tomorrow with the date.
All right, so
Thank
we
you.
have an applicant requesting a continuance. We have a motion.
I motion that we, go ahead.
I move to continue
Okay, to,
February.
okay.
And
There's
I
a
second it.
Second by Ms. Cornell, moved by Ms. Johnson, second by Ms. Cornell to continue the application to February 4th, 2019. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cornell?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Terrapini?
Yes, so the motion passes 4-0. Just please coordinate with Ms. McNeese, and we'll see you back on February 4th. Okay, our next application, 18-165, replace 2 wood doors on a residence. The address is 36 North Spring Boulevard. Ms. McNeese?
I don't have that. 36, I don't have that. 412 East Tarpon.
Am I on the wrong case?
Actually, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I skipped.
412.
I'm so sorry.
that's okay.
I have Spring next, but this
So we did Hibiscus. We don't usually have this many cases, so sorry about that.
412 East
So 412
Tarpon.
East Tarpon Avenue, it says for a build a second dwelling, the applicant is Wood. I guess I have my stuff out of order here. Okay, I'm sorry. So the address, it is case 18-164, 412 East Tarpon Avenue. Ms. McNeese.
Okay, this is a proposal for a second single-family residential dwelling on property at 412 East Tarpon Avenue that is within the district and is a contributing principal structure. The applicant is basically proposing a second single-story home in basically the rear yard, if you will, of this property in the southwest corner of the property. It would be behind the principal structure, the principal contributing structure, and would not be visible from East Tarpon Avenue. I'll just try to hit the highlights. I've got quite a bit of information in the staff report. As far as the proposed structure itself, relative to the main property in the area, the proposed overall height to the top is 17 3/4 feet.
Sorry, can you say that again? What's the height?
17.75, so 17.
And that measured to the top or the midpoint?
The very top peak of the roof, as shown on your set of plans. So you have a set of plans with a rendering and site plan, and then page 2 shows your elevation views. It's proposed to be in the backyard or behind the principal residence, would not be visible from East Tarpon Avenue, either with respect to really horizontally or vertically at this point. It's a proposed one-story, 1,059 square foot structure. There is an existing small garage and carport at the southeast corner bordering the alley. It's a shed-style building. that looks, the height is not indicated in the application. I judged it, I made a site visit and judged it to be about 10 feet high with the peak of the shed roof pointing toward the alley. That building is noted as a 1910 building on the property appraiser, but it is not mentioned on the master site file form. The proposed residence is proposed as to appear really as a cottage and to be subordinate in scale and mass to the principal property. As far as the placement relative to the alley, this alley is developed really mostly with backyards, some kind of standard sheds. There is one other shed-style building at the east end. There's a light industrial project going up at the east end of this alley. This alley is in the Transect Infill District of the city's Smart Area Plan Code. So it is an environment that is encouraged really to infill and to be used. That code encourages the alley to be used. This residence is proposed to be accessed from the alley, and of course your guidelines do also encourage access from alleys for these types of properties. The building is new construction. The building itself, as your guidelines state, should be consistent or not interfere with the district and with the main property, but be a product of its own time. It does use kind of similar basic look with the siding, metal roof, porches, and it's got some simple detail, shutters and railings and so on. So that is judged to be consistent overall with the character of the district and with the main principal residence. Again, this is in the T4A residential retail office transect of the city's transect code. And at this time, it appears that this application can comply with the standards of the transect code, including the placement, coverage, access, parking, and landscaping. This is a conditional use in this district, so the applicant will need to take the next step in obtaining conditional use approval, then move on to a building permit approval. I don't want to repeat myself. I think I talked about the details of the proposal. And in addition, the placement itself, being on the alley, also doesn't interfere really with the property overall. There is still a substantial rear yard, which at the current time is heavily landscaped, but it doesn't crowd the main house at all. So that is another positive feature of this application. The building does meet the historic standards, district standards, and it is a conditional use, as I mentioned. We'll need to comply with those standards, so the applicant will need to obtain conditional use approval. Staff recommends approval of this application with the understanding and condition that the applicant obtain all land use approvals and building permits, and property owners within 200 feet were notified and there were no responses. Are there any questions?
I had a question about setbacks. Are there setbacks?
The Transect district likes buildings to be close to, for lack of a better term, likes infill. So the setbacks for single family, believe it or not, in this district is maximum 5 feet from side yard, minimum from 5 from alley, or 12 feet from the alley center line. As I mentioned, it appears that this meets those setbacks. There will be a more substantial site plan with the conditional use and building permit approval, but it appears at this time that those setbacks can be met.
The only material information I saw on this was a standing seam metal roof. Is there any information in the application about what the siding is going to be, what the windows are going to be?
No.
Okay, well, that generally is something we would need on new construction, but I guess we'll let the applicant speak to us about it. Are there questions before we hear from the applicant? Okay, let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, Stephanie Wood, 412 East Tarpon Ave, otherwise known as the Thompson Jukes House. This is my brother-in-law, Fred, and my husband is out of town, so he gave permission for Fred to talk with us as well. So we moved into this house a couple of years ago. Again, love it, love the neighborhood. Fred and my husband's mom is getting older in age. They're the two sons, so we wanted to bring her up and have her live close to us. So the best solution for that was to have her build a little cottage-style home in the back of the house. It's funny, the architect, Inside Out Group, we're working with Cam, actually did the original drawings back in, I think it was 1998, when the house was restored and taken down. So he was really happy to be working on the project. You do have a picture, and I thought you did have renderings of everything, of all the materials that were going to be used.
We have a
apologize if you don't.
two-page, the full-size set of the 2 pages of the plans and the elevations, but it doesn't say what the material is for the side, you know, the walls, the exterior walls, and the windows.
Right, so it would be, is it wood frame?
Here we
So
go.
much, yeah. Like that.
Writing, but it doesn't say.
I guess what I mean is it, are the siding going to be wood? Is it going to be?
The siding's gonna be wood like the main house.
Okay.
The roof is metal like the main house that we have already. It'll be, as you can see from the drawings, it's almost like a miniature of the main house. The colors will be consistent, the white porches and everything.
And what about the windows? Will they be vinyl or wood windows?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But new construction, it's hard to say. I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to guess.
Right. Crawl foundation. I know it's an elevated foundation. Oh, is this the windows here? Rafters, tails. He's got everything upside down.
Yeah, half of it's upside down.
Well, what would they have to be? Does it matter whether they're vinyl or wood? Because we would adhere to anything that the Historical Society would want.
Does it matter if they're vinyl or wood?
Yes. Because keep in mind, when we're approving a new building, we're approving everything about it. So what
Right.
we're trying to figure out, and there's a little more flexibility in new construction with materials than there is on renovation of historic buildings. I personally like the size of the windows. All that looks good, but and you're doing wood siding instead of hardy board or all the other million terrible things you could do. So that's good. So really, the last piece of the puzzle is what kind of windows. Are they going to be vinyl frame or wood frame?
All right. Well,
And I would bet they're going to have to be
okay, let us
vinyl
flip through these and beam post,
for new
crawl
construction.
space.
You have the full plan? Ms. Wood, do you have the full plan set there?
I have all the,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see.
It's something different than what. Shutters. Oh, here's
On there that says anything about the windows, I just put that.
to the board, are you all concerned about it being wood or vinyl for the new construction? Okay, that's what.
Wood
Yeah. Okay. We're just gonna assume that it's vinyl to meet the hurricane code, and I think let's put that on the record. And I did have one other question. You need to go back there so we can capture the answer.
It's not a mention.
The shutters wood.
Sounds
is
like
good.
it sounds like from that you're building it for your mother or mother-in-law, I think.
Yeah.
And so maybe she's not gonna have a car, or maybe she does, but where would, if someone else lives there, you know, sometime in the future, where would that person park?
Right, so my husband has a car, I have a car. She has one now, but she's planning on, I think she was not going to have a car because everything's within walking distance.
We have enough parking.
But we have plenty of parking.
But
We have a garage, and then the carport, even with this there, would still be room enough for 4 cars.
okay, looks like you definitely have room for 2 cars in the garage and 1 in the carport, but once you build the building, there's not gonna be enough room for the,
There would be room in the garage, and then in front of the garage, we actually have room for a car to go vertically, and then under the carport, and then right next to the carport
I
would
see,
still
so
be
you're
room.
talking about stacked, 1 in the garage and 1 in the driveway, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And just to clarify, the transit code would require 3 spaces.
How many? 3?
3, 1.5 per dwelling.
Okay, so it sounds like they can provide that, and for single family, you allow the
Yeah.
car to be, one of the cars to be stacked?
Yes.
Right, okay. Discussion? Oh, sorry, I need to see if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak to this application, 412 East Tarpon Avenue for a new house. Seeing no one rise, did you have any more comments you'd like to make?
No, thank you.
All right.
I'd just like to say that I support the project.
Well, you're
I'd like to see Mom move to Tarpon.
Okay. All right. All right, it's back to the board. We have a more discussion or a motion?
I motion that it be accepted as written.
Can we clarify that they've stated that they're going to have wood siding and vinyl windows and a metal roof?
Yes.
Okay. Motion on the floor to approve it as submitted with vinyl windows, a metal roof, and wood siding. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Cornell. Any further discussion?
Will the door be wood also? The
think we
door
need
will be wood?
And the door is wood too? All right, so let's add that to the motion. So it'll be a wood door, wood siding, vinyl windows, and a metal.
I have a quick question about that, just as a pragmatic. Have you all cleared it with anyone in the building department that you can have a wood door in a new construction building? I mean, I know you can.
Right.
But just something to think about, because while the last application we talked about was an exception to historic building, this is new construction. This is not a historic structure. So y'all make the motion that you're gonna make. It's just something maybe the board wants to think about, that the applicant might have to think about. If not, and you say it's a wood door and they can't put a wood door, then they're forced to come back before you again. But you can I mean, you can craft your motion to say wood door would be preferred. If not available, then whatever. So obviously you guys, you know, the board has discretion to put conditions on them.
The building, so.
Yeah, I'd say wood preferred, but if not allowed by the building code,
Right.
that the staff would have the discretion to approve the same style, different material.
So is the person who made the motion would like to amend their motion to that verbiage?
Cornell?
Yes, I'll amend it to include the option of if a wood door is not available, that they can use something else.
Under the Florida building.
Okay, so the motion is wood siding, vinyl windows, a metal roof, and if wood doors are not available under the building code, that other alternative. I got that right? Okay. All right, any further discussion?
On the amended motion.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson will second it, all right? Roll call vote?
Ms. Cornell?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson? Mrs. Terrapini?
Yes, so the motion passes 4-0. I know you're gonna get a building permit, you're building a new house, you're not gonna be able to go without, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, now we're on the case that I tried to jump to before. Application 18-165, replace 2 wood doors on a residence at 36 North Spring Boulevard. Ms. McNeese?
This is to replace the existing doors on the back of an existing residence, specifically at the rear entrance to the principal structure. And this door replacement project is proposed on the 1980s era addition, rear 2-story flat roof addition to the structure that is noted on a master site file form. The replacement of the doors are proposed. The current doors are basically window doors, and I'm missing that now. But they have multiple pane windows. The applicant is proposing to replace that with a single window type door, same color surrounds. This would be a fiberglass door, I believe, and it would be painted to match the existing color scheme. This door proposes a single pane. There's this 1980s edition has a round single pane window. In the second story, it's got a single pane kind of window feature. I compared it to a transom, I guess, above the existing double doors. So the single pane door seems like it would be consistent with that existing architecture. And this door is somewhat visible from Orange Street. So that is one reason that it's something that you're looking at. It is not visible from Spring Boulevard, and it does not detract from or take away from the principal structure and the historic architecture of the principal structure. The project meets the historic guidelines and meets the land development code and is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And staff is recommending approval of the application with the condition that the applicant obtain all required building permits. There were no responses received to the public notification for this application.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward?
Hi, Michelle Ryan, 36 North Spring Boulevard. Sorry, I got a little bit of a cold, so. We're looking to replace the doors. They're actually the second set since we've purchased the home. We actually, when we moved in, we noticed we were getting some swelling on the wood doors, so we installed a gutter, hoping that that would extend the longevity of these doors. They're just a standard 15 light fir door. They didn't hold up. They're actually growing mushrooms. And I have pictures of the doors that we had there previous, and they did the same thing. So at this point, it's just getting a ton of weather because there is no overhang there, and they actually face my neighbor, and at the upper level. So, any questions?
I just want to state that this is my neighbor to the north. These doors face our house. It's on that common boundary, so no one from the public on any of the public streets is going to see it. In my opinion, that is significantly different than some of the other applications we had tonight. It's also on the second floor. A little different situation than house on Hibiscus. Yeah, there isn't even a roof over it. There's nothing there, is there?
No. We're actually going to use PVC jams and PVC brick mold because everything is rotting. trying to get it watertight. It's been quite the feat since we purchased the home. It's been a total renovation, and a lot of love and care has gone back into the house. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed the difference in the 2 years.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan.
Thanks.
Anyone from the public would like to speak to this case at 36 North Spring Boulevard? Seeing no one rise, it's back to the board. Any discussion or motion? Questions? A motion to approve the application as submitted. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Johnson and seconded by Ms. Cornell to approve it as submitted. Any further conversation about this application? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cornell?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Tarpani?
Yes. 4-0, the motion passes. It's approved. Be sure and get a building permit. If one's required, I assume it probably is. Okay, drum roll, please. We're on our last case. For application 18-166, 310 East Tarpon Avenue. This is the one we talked about earlier tonight. We're going to limit the presentation, please, and limit the decision to the new windows, the patio in the front yard, and the bar window. And the rest of the conversation, the rest of the application will come back. I guess it would. Okay, come on. We'll let Ms. McNeese summarize it, and then y'all can come forward and make your presentation.
Okay, so do we have a decision from the applicant?
That's a good point. Maybe we should ask.
And let me caveat this. I mean, let me give you more information. So if we only hear 3 items tonight, the deadline for an application for the February 4th meeting was Friday. So I would need to make a decision on what happens with the rest of it. I do have the information. Without the planning director here, I will make the kind of call that we could go forward with the rest, but I would need the specifics of everything within the next day or two. So I would need that separated out application, so I would need to work with the applicant in order to get the rest of it ready for the February 4th meeting, because we're on a short turnaround now.
So is this, well, the other items, I'll call them the supplemental items or the extra items, is that going to be a new application, or how are you going to treat that, Ms. McNeese?
Normally it would. I just said I would make the call and let it come back.
Okay.
I think we'd need a new separate form. It's just a question of whether the fee would be charged. Because, yeah, I think it would be a new application. It's not on this postcard.
Okay.
If you continue this item, I would renotice this item with a new postcard.
Okay.
So that's kind of the choice, and then we would hear it all as one project. So whatever you decide tonight on the 3 items, if you hear those, just the caveat, if what comes back would either be the rest of the items, or if the rest of those items affect what happens here tonight, it gets sort of complex. I don't know if what you decide tonight, if they need to modify the rest of the project, or if they would come back with something else, depending on what your decision is on these 3 items. So we're divvying up the items, and it does present an issue that I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with, so I'm just letting everyone know that if you want to wait 3 weeks and take it as a whole project, we can do that. If you want to bring it up, I would ask the attorney, could they get feedback on the 3 items and then have it continued? Okay.
No, so if the applicant chooses to move forward on the noticed items this evening, then whatever the board decides on those 3 items is the board decision. If the remainder of what you want to do is dependent on those 3 items, say, this is going to be a bad example, but say, you're going to redesign the window for the outdoor bar, and that gets denied, and that somehow changes what you're going to do with the fence. Understanding those are not connected, but my point is, if they say no to one item and it impacts something, the remainder of the changes, that may change what's going to happen. So the decision remains the same. You can move forward with the items that were legally noticed, get your decision on them, and then figure out what's going to happen from there. It sounds to me like it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround for you to get whatever additional information needs to be provided for the next meeting. Or you have the option, as we've discussed before, to take everything wholesale and just move it to the next meeting. So it's completely at the discretion of the applicant at this point.
What we would like to do.
Could you just give your name and address?
Oh, I'm
for the
sorry.
record, please?
Excuse me. Ed Hoffman, Hoffman Architects, 29 West Orange Street, Tarpon Springs. Having heard what you said earlier, that the 3 items that were on the postcard, which is quite frustrating, because there are so many parts and pieces that it's really hard to put all of that information that we're going to present, to put all that on one card.
Well, let me talk to you
But
from a
maybe you
legal
can help me.
perspective here.
Okay.
The postcard says windows, patio, bar.
Right.
You have fence, doors, other things that were not legally noticed. From a legal perspective, if you were to move forward with it and an affected party came forward and said, I was okay with everything, but now they're putting up a fence, I was never notified that there was going to be a fence put up.
Okay.
There would be a problem there because there wouldn't have been noticed. There's a lack of due process rights to that person.
Okay.
So from a legal perspective, my advice to the board is that if it hasn't been properly legally noticed, because that January 9th letter came in after the postcards had already gone out, then, if the board chooses to proceed, that's fine. But there may be a legal complication, and it's not following due process rights of those parties that may be affected by that. And that is my advice to the board, is to not have those items heard tonight.
Right.
It is up to the board whether or not they want to do that.
Okay. I believe that we presented doors were included on our original presentation. I mean, we gave you a lot more detail, I think, on the 9th or here recently when you asked for that. But I think the basic drawings that we submitted.
If we're arguing about what was noticed and what wasn't, we're not going to argue about that. The staff said pretty clearly what it is. There's 3 things. So I am only willing to, I'm not going to put the board in jeopardy or any of our board decisions in jeopardy because we discuss something that wasn't noticed. We had the same conversation on a couple other applications tonight where people didn't have, complete applications, or they didn't specify something. We made them clarify it. Some of them were minor enough that we could have them clarify at the podium. This, I think, goes a whole long ways longer beyond that. So, if you guys want to have discuss just those 3 things and have a discussion and a motion and decision on those, we can do that. Or you can come back on February 4th and you can provide extra information to Ms. McNeese if you like, or not. It's up to you. And then, we'll look at the whole package on February 4th. But if we're going to talk about it tonight, we're only going to talk about what was noticed, and we're not going to deviate from that. So,
I understand you can't rule on things that were not noticed.
Right.
I appreciate that. What our position is right now is that we feel that those were the main pieces of the puzzle that were noticed. And what we'd like to do is give you a presentation of the overall of what we have tonight, and you all can choose what you think are those 3 items. In other words, the bar, what is entailed with the bar. She didn't mention the handrail, but the bar, we're taking away the bar handrail that's there, and that's all part of the bar issue. We're making more of a conventional bar. So what I'd like to do is present to you all what we're trying to do, and then you all say, well, we'll approve this, this, and this that we feel were properly noticed, and then could you come back and give us, because in other words, we can move forward with our drawings based on your approval of those 3 things, hopefully, And then the fence, we'll submit all of this in the morning, and then, because we can deal with the fence later. That's an issue that's not critical. Does that make
Can I
sense?
ask staff one question, then Mr. Grillo, I know you want to say something. Ms. Denise, these 4 color pages that we have, was that submitted to you with the original submittal?
Yes.
Okay, so what came second was this January 9th, letter dated January 9th.
The letter and the attached photographs, correct.
Ms. McMillan?
Yeah, the original application itself only requested the 3 windows. So if any member of the public came to get the packet and looked at the application itself only requested that the 3 windows be replaced. So that's kind of where my concern was with the notice, legally speaking, where the notice is.
So on the application, it says, description of proposed work. We would like to install 3 windows on the front of the home. These windows will be single pane and be able to be opened to serve as a bar for the restaurant. The design will be from the time period of the home restaurant, blah, blah, blah. So that's all that was listed. That's what your concern is that was what was listed on the application, and then they submitted drawings that showed more than that.
Right, which people generally do if they've got a whole project and they're doing it piecemeal. So the plans, while they may have other things on it, the application only specified that. Now, I don't have a problem with going what was on the postcard because it was otherwise advertised. So that is fine from a legal notice perspective. If I might say, I'm not comfortable with you presenting the whole shebang and then having the board pick and choose. What I would suggest is that you limit your presentation to what you consider the bar, the patio, and the windows.
And I guess I'm kind of confused too. How does the windows differentiate from the bar? Because the windows are being replaced to create the bar.
If you refer to page 2 of the staff report, I should have numbered these items, but the first one, page 2 of the staff report, proposal to remove the upper portion of a portion of the octagonal bay tower and put in the windows and install a service counter along the edge at the bottom. That is the windows and the bar. And then 3rd from the bottom, install new entrance and new patio at the front with brick pavers. That was also on the postcard. The rest of it was not specifically on the postcard.
Well, I think based on the direction from Ms. McNeese and our attorney that we need to limit the conversation and the presentation to the things that were noticed. And because otherwise it's just going to get way too confusing and we can't act on them anyway. So you would limit it to that, and then we're happy to hear that part of it. If that's what you guys want to do tonight. Obviously, I think it is because you're still here. And,
yes, we're still
and so
here.
are we. So let's hear that part of it, and then you can get with Ms. McNeese as to what else she might need or what else you want to submit, and we'll come back on the February 4th.
Okay, could you give me just 1 second? These guys have been talking while you're talking, so
Okay.
Yeah. Part of this is that I know there's the 3 items, but there's a context to what we're trying to do. And so it's real hard to pick out just the individual pieces. I mean, I'll try my best to do that, but we kind of want to show you where this is going.
There's some reason why we can't just hear it all in 3 weeks. I mean, we're at October 4th now.
That puts the project 3 weeks behind, and you can talk to that, what that does to revenues.
I mean, revenue-wise,
Could you come to the microphone and give your name and address for the record?
my name is Doug Clark. I live at 2807 North Coast Drive, Palm Harbor. I did have under contract the purchase of this building, but what's stopping everything in place is obviously this board, because we want to adhere to what the city wants us to do, and I'm more than happy to do that, but I can't move forward with drawings. I mean, I still have a loan in place. I'm still paying on a loan, which is up to $1 million now. So I do have a family. I do have to make money, and I understand the process of this, but there is a lot at stake with this in place. This is very huge. I love what's going on with the city of Tarpon Springs. I've been involved with revamped cities. You can, I mean, New Orleans after Katrina, Benton Harbor, Michigan, you can look it up, the Arts District. I've been involved with this type of city development. So I am very aware of the procedures that go in place, but the reason we want to present this is because I think you'll be very impressed with what we have in place, what we're going to do. And not only will this restaurant be the talk of our city, and I'll say ours because that's going to be the name of the restaurant as well, because it is ours, but it'll be talked about through Tampa Bay, and with the help of Ed Hoffman here, and Hoffman Architects, you're gonna love it. So what we're talking about when you say the bar, door, and patio, those are three main components of what we're trying to accomplish with this actual restaurant and what we're going to do. So we can rule on that, but when we talk about fence, as Ed was talking about, before, that can come back later. But when you're going through this, what he's trying to get at is that this is the drawings, you're going to see what's going on, but we can still rule on the bar, the windows, and the patio. I mean, it's going to be in plain sight day. You will see it. So that's what we're talking about. So there is a lot at stake, and the 3 weeks does make a huge difference to me.
Can I just ask you one question, Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Have you purchased the property, or are you the contract purchaser?
We have purchased, we're in contract, and the finalization will be before the end of the month.
Finalization, you mean by you want to purchase it by the end of January?
No, we have the contract in place, everything is in place.
So it's a yes or no question. Do you own the property, or do you or not?
Not yet.
Okay. When will you close? When do you plan to close, if you know that, if you have a date to close?
The date to close is February 11th.
Okay.
Trying to close early, but we do have the loans I've been talking about is for renovation money that I'm not yet able to use, and I had to push the closing date back because I wanted to make sure this was in place first.
Okay.
That's why. So if we go into February, then teetering along. So yeah, that's it. So I'll pass it on to.
Okay, just beware, if you start drifting and giving us too much information about stuff that we're not going to make a decision on tonight, I'm going to cut you off because it's 8:30 at night, and we've had a lot of cases tonight, and we still have some conversations. So, and we're going to have the same conversation next month. So please, I understand that you want to keep it in context, but try and limit that part of it if you can. So, applicants?
You want to go forward?
Yeah, I want to go forward.
Okay.
Let's go. Move forward.
This is
Is this different than what we had in our package?
Bob Ray, and okay.
I'm not going to accept new information tonight on such a complex project. I don't think it's fair to us. I don't think it's fair to the public. I don't think it's fair to anybody. You mean, come on, guys.
Okay.
I mean,
then
really.
I think we're.
If you're going to have something different that you want to submit to the staff as a revised application, I'm all fine with that. But you cannot expect us on the fly to be dealing with changes on a major project. It's really not fair to us. If you want to talk about what you submitted, the package that we have right here that is dated 12/7/18, I'm happy to hear it.
There are some things in what was stapled together, because obviously we did not know what you were going to accept or what you're not. What is stapled together is the full package.
Well, if you guys want to accept it, I'll leave it to the board. If you want
The changes are really the location of the bar. Let me just tell you, one of the biggest parts and pieces of this project is to try to correct some of the problems that have been done in the last one or two renovations that were, in my view, very inappropriate. What we're trying to do is to make the building more visible. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview, context, and then you can say, go jump in a lake. So we're trying to right now the building is very closed, they put in this crazy high handrail for the bar. They have this extra roof piece that was for a signage, and also there's no windows, there's nothing welcoming at all from Tarpon Avenue side. It's very blanked off. So what we're trying to do is create a more welcoming, particularly from Tarpon Avenue, a welcoming thing to invite you in. What the presentation that we were originally doing was that we were opening up that center turret to become the bar with the windows. That's the bar and windows that we're discussing. In this, the question is still the bar and the windows, but we were going to put a front door, well, and make a front door entry so we have a focused entry from the street, and not have this hideaway type of a project. So we've moved the bar over to the side underneath the little porch that's already there, so we would not be adding any additional things. So that is a bar discussion. So I'm not, I'm a little bit confused as to whether you're going to hear that a bar discussion. So
bar is still there, and the windows are still going. Where they're actually at, it's the front, except we didn't open it all the way up front. We kind of put the project aside and put a more creative you guys have on all your historic houses, which we have pictures in.
I'm gonna let the board take a look at these. Mike, I just looked at it pretty quickly. This looks a lot different than what you've submitted, and I think let the board take a look at it, look at them side by side, but you've got a different orientation for the brickyard on page 2. You've got a different front porch.
If staff could be recognized.
Say again?
If staff could be recognized.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you.
Suggestion to the applicant, see if this will fly. I also see a fairly substantial difference at the front. One of the major items is replacement of those. It was 3 of the octagonal wall panels, partially with windows. Would you like to discuss the replacement of, it looks like you wish for 2 of those windows to go in?
correct.
Would you like to discuss those with and I would ask if the drawings that the board has now, the renderings that the board has now still represent the configuration of the individual windows, and see what the board will do with those windows. The patio, I mean, it's without looking, it might be a slightly different configuration. I mean, you could do the patio as well, but that might be something, I don't know if that's something you can wait on. But the windows might be something you want to go forward with and just talk about the windows and see what happens with the windows. That's just a suggestion.
So,
because you do have in your original packet a representation of how the window fits into the octagonal tower panel.
let me just ask one question, simple of the applicant. Is what you passed out tonight what you want us to vote to consider with regard to the front windows and the bar? And is this what you want us to consider as opposed to what we got in our packet?
What we just passed out tonight, yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm not going to review stuff on the fly. I'll let the board decide and weigh into, but
Okay.
this is materially different than what you submitted to us. So I think the best course of action, board, let me know if I'm speaking out of turn. I think you need to come back on February 4th with whatever package. If this is the real package you want, I'm happy to review that package. Let the staff have a chance to review it. I mean, everything, the major part of the windows and where the bar's going are totally different in this package than what we got in what you're submitting tonight. So we cannot take something brand new of this significance on this of a significant building and review it on the fly. It's just not fair to us, and it's not fair to you. Because what if we miss something? And what if we don't do the right evaluation? It's just not fair, guys. Board, that's my position.
I agree.
Gary?
Gosh, this is such I'm so excited to see this project. That's the thing. I'm anxious to see what you're about. But I agree, if it's not been noticed, then it puts us in a bind. And I don't feel confident making a decision on what's been submitted with limited without seeing the full picture.
And if it sounds like y'all are still making some tweaks to it, and that's fine. We're open to you guys making those changes, because this is a pretty big difference from what we got in our packet. But let's see the whole thing. Let's notice everything, and let's take a look at it as a whole when, in February. It would be my opinion. I think you're going to get a bad read on some individual items one by one without the whole thing. I think personally, there's probably some things I'm going to overlook that I wouldn't particularly love on a historic building, but because of the overall package, I'm willing to overlook some things here and there, some changes that you're making that wouldn't be a strict best adaptive reuse method. But
Well,
I'm open to considering the whole thing as a package. I just don't think it's fair to do it piecemeal. I don't think that's the best way to go about it.
And also, would the staff recommendation change based on,
Well, she hasn't reviewed these either.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Did you see these before tonight, Ms. McNeese?
No.
Thank
Okay.
I think we need to make a motion to continue this to February 4th agenda. Is there a motion?
I motion we continue it to February 4th for more complete information.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, it's been moved and second to continue this application to February 4th. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cornell?
I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No.
Oh,
I said
okay.
yes.
Roll
Ms.
call.
Cornell? Ms. Page?
yes.
Ms. Johnson? Mrs. Terrapini?
Yes, so this application's been continued to February 4th. Please coordinate with Pat like tomorrow at 8:05 as to when you're going to submit the pack. Our January meeting got pushed late because of Epiphany, so there's a short distance between the January meeting and the February meeting. So that's why it's a little tight. But just coordinate with her as to when you need to submit everything. And
This is the package that we will be submitting.
oh, good. Well, then you've got everything done, and all you have to
So
do is submit it to her and revise your application to show all the things that you're doing.
Want to
And
explain that to you Monday? Or, tomorrow?
You want to
Okay.
approve the minutes?
yeah. All right. Okay. So let's go back. Can we go back, please, to the minutes of December 3rd?
Would you all like those?
No.
To keep those? Or?
We'll get them when we'll get them when the. All right, so board members, let's go back to the December 3rd minutes. I think hopefully everyone had a chance to take a quick peek at these and review them. Any revisions? Is there a motion?
I motion that we accept the minutes as read.
Thank you. Ms. Cornell, is there a second to that motion? Carol wasn't here, so she doesn't.
Oh, yes, there's a second.
Ms. Page, second to the motion. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Ms. Cornell?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Terrapini?
Yes. Motion passes 4-0. I know it's late, but I just want to bring something really quick to everyone's attention. And I'd like to ask that we don't have to talk about it tonight, but just to put it on the February meeting. Hopefully we don't have too long of an agenda. Remember the case that we were talking about, that was the garage in the back and the appeal? And so I was just looking at that section of the code about the appeals, and I found that the code says that you can only appeal a denial. That concerned me. So those folks that were opposed to that case, the board approved it. So they don't have any ability to appeal. So I just want to put that on the board discussion. Which one? The one that made me think of it is the house that's on, they built a garage in the back. Oh. No, it's in the fruit salad area.
On Bay.
Oh, yeah. Street. Anyway, the board approved the garage. The neighbors have come, they came 3 or 4 meetings concerned about it and the height, because the height of it, they're concerned about the height. And so, without getting into the merits of the case, what bothered me was I had been telling them, well, if you had appealed that within the time frame, but the time frame is now gone, well, actually, they can't appeal because the code is that you can only appeal a denial. So it just seems on its face to me unfair. So I just want to have a conversation, and Ms. Aguelo, we appreciate your comments next month too. But I just think I'd like us to talk about that a little bit, and maybe we can include that section of the code, Ms. McNeese. Let's talk about that and see if maybe a code amendment's needed. It just seems odd to me. So I know it's really late, and everybody's probably pretty tired as I am.
There was dates.
Really hungry.
I think you had dates. There was a list here with dates of the 2019 meetings. Did you want us to review those?
Yes. Is there?
I
So our next one is February 4th. If any of those dates look difficult for anybody, none of them look to be around a holiday.
And I also have a question. Is there ever a case where we could have a meeting sooner than the next scheduled meeting? Like in the case of this last application, it seemed like time was of the essence, and I realized that there's also deadlines that had to be met on the part of the applicant. But would there ever be a case when we could have a meeting, like an emergency meeting?
Yes, your rules of procedure provide for the calling of a special meeting. This case may not be one that would have been ripe for something like that because there are still legal notice requirements.
Yes.
So while your rules of procedure allow for the calling of a special meeting, and there is a special procedure for that, it has to be in writing by 3 members of the board, and then approved by the clerk or their designee, and it has to be 24 hours advance notice. So you could do that, but then there's also the statutory requirements and the code requirements for public hearing notices, and you may run into an issue with that.
Okay.
So if it's something that you think you might want to do, obviously we need to be very cognizant of, not discuss, you want to call a special meeting, you can talk to each other about that, just not whatever the content of the meeting is going to be. Obviously, you don't want to violate sunshine, but it would probably be best going to the board secretary, shoot her an email saying, I think we need to call a special meeting on this. Then she can send an email out to the board, and individually, without copying or hitting reply all, you can all suggest what you want to do. And a procedure like that. So yes, there is the ability, it's just it will depend on what the purpose of the meeting is to whether or not it will be able to happen.
I wanted to discuss this I know we're all tired and we want to leave, but I wanted to discuss this just kind of to advocate on the part of the applicant, because I understand where he seems to be coming from, but also it sounded to me, unless I misunderstood here, the noticing issue, was that an error on the part of staff for not noticing that, or was it because he submitted the application late?
The application was not late.
It was not late.
Yeah, it was, I will say it was partial. I don't want to say error. I guess it was an error. Part of the problem, we've discussed this internally, is we get an application. It didn't have a narrative originally. It just said replace windows, and it had drawings. The day we get that, and we have to send a postcard out the following week, we have not done a detailed review yet. Right? That we either need to we've talked about starting some sort of completeness review, which adds another step. I don't know, we don't want to add a whole lot more lead time for these applicants if we can help it. And as you all know, we're one staff person short, have been for 6 months, and that's part of the issue. I mean, this packet I worked on last Wednesday night, and I missed the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's on me for sure. Same with the postcard to a certain extent, but then there was additional information. Once I did start, there was additional information included that I would not have seen on the original plans. So it was kind of a collective issue.
I think that
with this one,
I really feel strongly that because it was so complicated and there was miscommunication here, that it might be it might be worthy of considering a special meeting, and another reason is that this application is going to be so lengthy that I'm not sure that we should hear it on top of 6 other applications at the end of the night.
Yeah,
There's a
that,
lot.
I mean, that was a
It's like grading
weird
essays. I'm a
missive.
teacher.
Yeah.
I don't want to grade all my essays on one day.
I mean, I think that's unusual. We don't normally have that many cases. That's kind of unusual. We usually have 2, sometimes 3. My concern about doing a special meeting is we still got to do the notice, and we still got to give her time to, in this case, we still got to give her time to review it. So you're probably pretty close to 3 weeks from now anyway.
Yeah, the notice, the postcards have to go out this Friday
Right. So
for the February 4th meeting.
for February 4th.
So
Yeah.
in
Right,
this
so-
respect, there's likely no way to call a special meeting based on the notice requirements.
Okay.
Well, that's the other thing I would say too. I mean, I think the applicant, in addition to doing a set of drawings, and we had this on a couple other cases tonight, where the applicant didn't put everything in, write down everything on the application form as they showed on their plan. This one was probably the biggest example of that. But when the applicant, in this case, the case we just had, says replace 3 windows for a bar, that doesn't really reflect what was all on those plans. So a little bit's on them too to say, to be a little more comprehensive, as to say, look, here's all what we're doing, and go in and sit down with Pat and go over the plans. Of course, it was the holidays, so, you know, maybe there was not an ability to do that.
Well, but I think if there was a special meeting, would we have been able to give that to the applicant as an option? Like, you have an option to put all of this aside right now and prepare for a special meeting, or not?
That's
I don't
not
know how
really
that-
the intent of a special meeting. A special meeting is usually called, like you said, we have a lot of meetings. Maybe we need, because your rules of procedure also say you can hold meetings more frequently than once a month.
Okay.
You know, if you have a month that, you know, Pat says we have 17 applications, you can say, okay, let's do 2 meetings this month. Let's see which ones we can notice for which ones. In this case, because you have such a shortened time frame between this
Right.
meeting, because of the Epiphany, between this
Right.
meeting and February, the ability to call a special meeting, you're still running into the legal notice requirement.
Got it.
But in the future, if that, you know, if that kind of thing comes up, like I said, yes, you have the ability to do it. Maybe more it would be for, we want to talk about the guidelines and
Sure.
really get in depth. We don't want to do that in a meeting. Maybe we call a workshop, but we call it a special meeting. Fine. But in this case, you're running up against the legal notice requirement. So if postcards are going out on Friday for a February 4th meeting, that means postcards would have had to gone out prior to this meeting for a special meeting called next week. You know what I'm saying?
I guess what you're saying, the bottom line is even a special meeting doesn't eliminate the requirement for public notice. You still have to do public
Correct. And in
notice.
most cases, when you're talking about, you know, if it wasn't a quasi judicial decision, I wouldn't have a problem with it, because you can give as little as 24 hours notice to the public for something like that. But this is a public hearing that is quasi judicial, that requires evidence.
Yes.
That's a different notice standard. That's not the traditional 24 to 48 hours is fine. This is something that it has statutory notice requirements and local code ordinance requirements, notice requirements. Yeah. So again, in the future, that's something that your rules of procedure allow you to do, so it could be something that you, but in this case,
Maybe when we get into the design guidelines, we might have one meeting for cases and one meeting for the design guidelines, because that's a much more detailed conversation, the design guidelines, and you still need to move, if somebody submits an application, we still got to move that along and, you know, review those cases timely and get the decision.
Yeah, and
so I appreciate what you're trying, you know, the options that we're trying to give the applicant, but at this, it's just not feasible under the law.
Well, and I'm also trying to consider the amount of review in one
Right,
night.
that's going to be a lot for this board. You know, this application in itself could take an entire meeting. Do we know how many applications?
Do you know what you
if there's
have for
anything
next-
else?
For February, I believe we have 2 right now.
And then this one would be
One that was continued.
from earlier.
Yeah, and then I believe there's a new one. I think, Kim, if you remember, I think there was one submitted, and then, yeah, this would be the 3rd.
So this would be 3.
So the third is the case that we just continued, the
Mm.
restaurant
Mhm.
on Tarpon Avenue. So right now you have 3 cases and the deadline must be passed because,
It was Friday.
okay, so there's just 3 cases for February. One of which includes the case we just now, the very last case.
And then the other one that was continued
Right, with the
from
windows.
tonight, the windows.
Right.
On Hibiscus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so 4.
4, so then that makes 4.
Johnson, 4.
Even if this was properly voted, come with a completely different set of drawings, meeting, not okay. I have to stand in front of the building, look at the,
Well, yeah, and I can't speak to that because of that wouldn't meet the note. If it was properly noticed, that would be a board decision whether or not you had enough time to review and if you want.
Okay,
Thank
so we
you.
got 4 cases for next month. We shouldn't be any more because deadline's passed. So we'll definitely have this case. We'll have the house on Hibiscus, and then 2 new cases.
Another continued case is 455 East Tarpon. It's on the corner of Tarpon and Levis.
The house where they started the construction. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to
Okay.
give it to me, I'll recycle it.
I thought you wanted to. If not, I'll just toss it.
4.
Okay.
Just 4.
I'll recycle it.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, staff. And
You don't
I
have to
have
take
one
my
more
things out.
comment. I'm so
Yes,
sorry,
ma'am.
guys. We have had a lot of continued applications, either on behalf
Save
of
your
the
clips.
applicant or at the pleasure of the board. I just wanted to make, we have a pretty consistent, you guys are usually here, but in case somebody misses for tonight and is at the next meeting, there are guidelines within your rules of procedure that state you can hear and vote on the continued application as long as you go back and watch the video or read the transcript, which we don't have a transcript, so you'd have to listen to the recording or watch the video from the previous meeting. So I just wanted to touch on that because, again, within the last few months, we've had a lot of continued applications. So if you are not present at a meeting and there is a continued application and you have not already done that, then you cannot participate in the discussion or the vote. So you need to go back and watch that, and that should be reflected in the minutes that something was continued. But you may want to take it upon yourself to say, I missed the last meeting, was anything continued? I need to watch that video.
And I think we need to let all members know that, because
Yeah,
we have members who are not here
maybe
tonight.
Tim could
Let's
just
have that
send out a
discussion.
quick-
Yeah, maybe put it in a memo to everybody. And now it's so easy. You can do it because you just go to the city's
Yes.
website and they're all right
Right.
there. So used to be lots more
You would have to
difficult.
come and request the recording.
Listen to
but-
the tape, so.
Right. So I just wanted to make sure because we do have a lot of them recently and I just want
Yes.
to make sure we're covering all our bases.
That's a good reminder. All right, well, thank you, everybody, staff and board members. It was a long meeting, but I think we did pretty good considering. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting now at 8:57.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Wow. Off to a bang.